Our movie summary begins in 1914 and we see a ship moving through the South Atlantic Ocean, making its way toward its destination. But after 67 days, it still hasn't arrived. On the ship, there's a weather officer named David. He's kind of like a signalman. David was sent by the government on a special mission to a mysterious island, an island hidden deep within parts of the Atlantic. David's task is to stay there for a whole year, and he's supposed to monitor wind speed, track strange changes, and collect data to understand their cause. At that time, Captain Axel, the ship's captain, comes to him. He's responsible for taking David there himself, along with supplies for a whole year and everything David might need. Days pass and hours go by, and after a long and exhausting journey, they finally reach the island. Then they take a small boat and land on the shore, bringing all the necessary equipment with them. The island is isolated with no one there to greet them, and there's nothing on it except an old lighthouse and a small hut. David is supposed to live there for a whole year, just like Robert, the meteorological officer before him, did. The place is a mess, the furniture is broken, and everything suggests that a disaster happened here. After that, the team heads toward the lighthouse, hoping to find out what happened there. On the way, David notices that someone has written their name on the water source, claiming that the water belongs to them. But is there even anyone living here in the first place? And when they arrive, they find an even stranger scene. The entire lighthouse is surrounded by wooden stakes, as if someone deliberately built a fence around it for protection. In the end, they knock on the gate repeatedly, but no one answers. Eventually, they force the gate open and go inside. When they go upstairs, they find the lighthouse keeper lying on the ground. You can't tell if he's alive, dead, or what his story is. After a while, he wakes up looking strange, disheveled, and in a bad state. When they ask him about the meteorological officer, Robert, he simply tells them that he died. When they ask for more details, he tells them that he died of a fever. But when the captain asks about the body, his response is even stranger. He gets confused and says he doesn't remember, as if he's not sure of what he's saying. What happens makes David and the captain feel that this man isn't normal and that there's something wrong with his mental state. But they didn't have any evidence in front of them to reveal the truth. That's why the captain offers David to come back with him and says, "Son, things here aren't normal. It's better if you come back with us." But David decides to stay, especially since he knows that if he succeeds in this mission, he'll get a decent amount of money, which he really needs. Besides, he also needs to get away from people for a while and be alone. And if only he were truly isolated, my friend, he doesn't know that things don't always go as planned. Anyway, the captain has grown attached to David and doesn't want to leave him, but in the end, he advises him to take care of himself and gives him a gun, since this place doesn't seem normal at all. After the ship leaves, David starts organizing the house he'll be living in. He cleans and arranges everything because he's going to stay here for a whole year. For David, he's just happy to get away from people. No noise, no thoughts, nothing to trouble his mind. But did you think you could escape from yourself? And while he's getting used to the cupboards, he finds an old journal that belonged to the previous meteorological officer, the one who arrived on the island in 1913. The notebook contains a lot of information about the island, but most of it is mysterious and incomplete. Like pictures of animals that don't exist here. He also finds pictures of terrifying creatures. It's the first time he's seen anything like them, as if he's in another world. Anyway, David doesn't really care and assumes that Gareth was just a horror movie fan with a vivid imagination. Among the pages, he also finds a picture of the officer's wife, which makes him imagine how much this man lived on the island and how lonely he must have felt. He keeps thinking until exhaustion overtakes him, and he falls asleep at the desk with the notebook in his hands. The next morning, David starts his work, but he's heading toward the sea. He suddenly stops when he notices that the rocks on the shore are arranged in a strange way, with shells distributed among them to form a pattern. But he doesn't dwell on it and continues his work collecting weather data. While he's working, he glances toward the lighthouse and sees something strange. He imagines that there's another person standing with Jennair, but he tries to convince himself that it's just a hallucination from exhaustion. After a while, night falls and David is still focused on his work, trying to kill time until he hears a knock at the door. Of course, he thinks it's Jennair, but no one answers. He picks up the lamp and confidently moves toward the door. But suddenly, strange noises start to fill the place, so he says, "That's not Jennair, no way." And suddenly, he sees a terrifying sight. A strange hand stretches out under the door. He injures it and quickly runs to the basement, locking himself in. It's terrifying because the hand he saw wasn't human. It's obvious that it's some other creature. Moments later, the creature enters the house, moving with heavy steps and making strange noises, as if it's searching for something. Meanwhile, David starts peeking out from a small apartment, but suddenly he sees the creature's eyes staring back at him. In that moment, fear turns into survival instinct, and he quickly stabs it with a knife. At that moment, the creature flees and screams. But David knew that this didn't mean he was finally rid of it. So he locks the basement door, ties it with a rope, and spends the rest of the night hiding. His eyes are wide open, and he can't sleep, my friend. The next morning, he goes out cautiously and finds strange footprints in the sand that don't look human, so he follows them and sees they lead toward the sea. And there, David realizes the truth. All of this explains why the previous night he surrounded the lighthouse with wooden stakes. That man was trying to protect himself from those creatures. But are there really creatures like that living with us on this planet? This thought was driving him crazy. But after what happened, David feels that the house has become dangerous. So he runs toward the lighthouse as if it's a fortress, shouting loudly, "Gunner, please open up for me, for God's sake." But Gunner neither answers him nor opens the door. And when he insists even more, Gunner throws dirty water at him. So David says, "Thanks anyway. We'll meet again, man." The whole island is basically just one room and a hall. After that, David goes back to the house feeling frustrated. He feels like the island turned out to be a trap, and that what's coming is definitely going to be even worse. So he has no choice but to fortify the house before that creature comes back again. Because for sure when he wounded it, he provoked it even more. Or maybe all of this was just his imagination and he was just imagining it. He starts boarding up the windows with wooden planks and makes sure they're really secure. Then he stakes everything down with pegs, just like the ones he saw around the lighthouse. He also puts all the newspapers and books he has by the gate, so that if the creature comes back, he can set them on fire to scare it away. Knowledge truly is light, but life is precious too. All these precautions, and he's still not sure they're enough. He still doesn't know that what he's about to discover tonight will literally change everything. While searching through the house, he finds an old wooden box with a rifle and a large number of bullets inside. So he says, "Thank God." This discovery gives him a bit of courage, but the fear from what he saw is still deeply rooted inside him. Time passes slowly, and as the sun sets, darkness covers the entire island. Things don't always go as planned. David sits in a corner of the house, holding the rifle, ready and on alert. Up until now, he still can't believe what he saw. At that moment, my friend can't hear anything except his own breathing, which grows heavier with tension. But suddenly, the strange noises return again. And when he gets closer to the window, he sees a sight that chills him to the bone. May God help him. It turns out it wasn't just one creature. It was a whole group, a full tribe of terrifying creatures coming out of the sea. And it's certain they're coming straight for him, with him as their target. Within seconds, they start banging and he shouts, "I swear I'm opening!" The banging gets louder and they try to break down the door. At that moment, David starts shooting at them with his rifle, and the bullets hit some of them. But that doesn't stop them, and the attack only gets more intense. The house literally starts shaking after he provokes them. And when he feels they're about to break in, he sets fire to the newspapers and books he had soaked in oil. As soon as the fire starts, the light scares the creatures and they begin to retreat toward the sea. But the disaster is that the fire itself becomes a danger, and he can't control it. The whole house catches fire. At that moment, David covers himself with a blanket, breaks the door, and escapes from the heart of the fire. He quickly runs toward a large rock next to the lighthouse and hides, unable to breathe from fear and pain because his right hand has been burned. But then, the rain starts to fall, pouring down on him and putting out the fire. The rain continues and pours down all night long. And when morning comes, the house has turned to ashes. Now David has no choice but to go to the lighthouse because he's now certain that what he saw wasn't just his imagination or hallucinations. This is something strange, something he's never seen before in his life, so he grabs his rifle and hides among the rocks surrounding it. And as soon as he sees Jonah coming out to fetch water, he quietly follows him, intending to threaten him with the weapon so he can get into the lighthouse. Because that's the only place that could protect him when night falls. But at that moment, one of the terrifying creatures appears and is about to kill him, if not for Jonah's intervention, who stops it and assures him that it's tame and serves him. So David is surprised, but he keeps his cool and doesn't hit him. But he sets a clear condition. If he's going to let the creature live, he has to let him into the lighthouse. After all, he wants to live comfortably too. I mean, if we're going to face danger, we all face it together. And indeed, Jonah agrees, especially since David seems like he could be useful to their efforts. He also has enough supplies to last him a whole year before sunset. The two of them gather the remaining supplies and quickly return to the lighthouse before night falls. That day, David sleeps like the dead because he was sure the lighthouse would protect him, and the next morning he wakes up to an unfamiliar scene. The creature itself is beside him, licking his hand as if it's treating him, and we find out that it's female, not male. And for sure, Gunnar gets upset, almost as if he's jealous of her as time goes by. The wound starts to heal at a strange speed, as if its tongue really is a cure. And when he goes up, he finds Jonah counting the remaining rounds in the rifle. And the creature is standing next to him, helping him in its own way. This scene, my friend, makes David think. Maybe these creatures aren't aggressive by nature. Maybe it's humans who have misunderstood them. And his feelings start to change to amazement, and he feels that what he's seeing is a real miracle. A creature coming from the depths of the sea, able to breathe both in and out of water. At that moment, he decides that he has to learn more about it. Maybe one day he'll come back and bring this life to the whole world, and he suggests the idea to Gunnar, telling him, if people hear this story, we'll become famous and spread everywhere. Think about it, my friend. No more struggling, life will be sweet. We'll eat sushi in the air, and you'll be golden. But Gunnar sees things differently. He doesn't care about fame, and he doesn't even want to go back to the world in the first place. Someone with no family, who feels that life in society turns you into a submissive slave, obedient and compliant, and both of them are in the same profession. So for Gunnar, this island is the perfect world. Here, he considers himself the king, ruling over a place where no one can compete with him. He lives in complete freedom and does whatever he wants, with no laws and no people around. As for the strange creature that served him, her story began the day he saved her life. She was still young then and got caught in his fishing net. At that time, Gunnar freed her instead of leaving her to die. From that day on, this amazing creature started living with him in the lighthouse, obeying everything he said and feeling safe with him. But that sense of safety was just an illusion, because Gunnar was a harsh and stubborn man and often treated her with violence, without mercy or emotion. Over time, their relationship became filled with control and humiliation. And maybe that's why those sea creatures started coming up from the depths. They were trying to bring her back. Now, I want you to really focus on what's coming next, my friend, because what came before was just French fries, and everything that's coming is fries with fat. The night is closing in and the action is about to start. Gunnar asks him to get the weapon ready for the confrontation that happens every night when they attack. He goes out to the balcony and Gunnar fires flares toward the shore. And after a few moments, the water in front of them starts to move, and suddenly a huge number of those creatures appear, rushing toward them at an incredible speed as soon as they get close. Gunnar starts firing in every direction. But David stands there, paralyzed with fear, unable to move. He slowly backs away and withdraws. My friend, fear takes such a hold of him that he collapses to the ground and loses consciousness. That night passes with great difficulty for Gunnar, who had hoped for more and ended up fighting alone in this ordeal. With the sunrise, the creatures begin to withdraw and calm returns. But the smell of death is everywhere. David regains consciousness and finds Gunnar in front of him. But he looks different. Anger and exhaustion are written all over his face. From that moment on, their relationship changes completely. A new day begins in David's life, filled with orders and non-stop work. Now, David has to do all the chores: fetching water, cleaning the lighthouse, and standing guard with Gunnar at night. After sunset, the two of them go out to the balcony again, and Gunnar fires a flare to see the creatures emerging from the sea and attacking. At that moment, Gunnar quickly retreats, shuts the heavy door behind him, and locks David out on the balcony. And as he grows up, he faces the creatures alone all night long, meaning he gets back at them. And with the sunrise, he wakes up, and the surprise is that David is still alive. He turned out to be stronger than expected, covered in blood, and so on. After that day, things became routine and normal. The whole day is work and sleep, and all night they play with those sea creatures. What bothered David the most deep inside was what he saw every day, the suffering of the creatures they lived with. Every day, he realized more and more that they were intelligent and were almost defending their own existence. But all the time, he kept finding excuses for Jonah, because he had lived alone on the island for years, and surely his mind had become unbalanced and he had turned into a different person. And despite all that, my friend, David had no choice but to obey. The fear that once filled his heart disappeared, and he started moving like a machine. The days became all the same. At night, they fought the creatures, and during the day, they cleaned and repaired the lighthouse. And every day, David lived with the hope that he would escape. After that, there comes a period of calm that breaks the routine because the creatures haven't attacked for 2 weeks, so they try to kill time with a simple game. They play chess. And during this, David hints to Gunnar about another idea, suggesting to him, what if they took one of the creatures from the island and presented it to the world? These creatures have 2 respiratory systems. They have both lungs and gills, so they can breathe on land and in water. So if experiments were conducted on them, they would be the discovery of the century. David was trying to steer Gunnar's mind away from thoughts of killing and bloodshed. He felt sorry for the victims who were dying every day. But Gunnar is stubborn and believes that they are a species that doesn't deserve to live at this time. And a small mistake from them was enough to turn everything upside down. After they went out to play and forgot to turn on the lighthouse light, and the night was strangely dark and quiet, suddenly the sea turned rough and the sounds of the mob grew louder. The creatures started taking advantage of the darkness and attacked. After a terrifying attack, David notices that they have started attacking in much greater numbers than before, literally like ants, and their numbers have become terrifying. And the disaster is that they're running out of bullets and their hands are shaking as they try to fend off the attack. But the pressure is intense. In the end, David and Gunnar are forced to retreat and they quickly head up to the top and lock themselves in. Unfortunately, Gunnar gets a very serious injury in his leg. Meanwhile, the creatures were trying to break in and both of them felt like the end was near. But luck is on their side and dawn begins to break. That's why the creatures return to the sea and calmness settles over the place for a while. We see the creature with them trying to help and treat Gunnar's wounds. At that moment, David starts to see things clearly. He realizes that this war has no end. The problem is the number of creatures keeps increasing and they're running out of bullets. Even the food has become very scarce, and with each passing day, he feels the end is getting closer. But the next day, while he's walking outside the lighthouse thinking, he spots a distant ship at sea, so he quickly grabs the flare gun to signal them. But before he can pull the trigger, Gunnar attacks him, knocks him to the ground, and takes the gun from him. At that moment, he's surprised to see that the creature that had been living with them is trying to protect David. He is shocked by her reaction and promises her severe punishment. David, on the other hand, doesn't understand why Gunnar is so determined to stop him. It seems clear that Gunnar has gone mad. To him, the island has become his kingdom, the lighthouse his castle, and David his servant. The result is that the ship is moving away, and the only chance for survival is disappearing, my friend. We see David's heartbreak as he yells at Gunnar, telling him, "You're a coward and afraid to face people on the second day." David sees the creature looking sad and injured, and it's clear that Gunnar hit her because she defended David. At that moment, he approaches her with sympathy and gives her a small whalebone shaped like a boat. But what's strange is that as soon as the creature sees the boat, her eyes light up and she leads him with it to a hidden spot at the edge of the island. There, he finds a real boat that's been hidden for years. The elements had almost erased its features. He's surprised and feels hope again. And when he goes back to ask Jonah about the boat, Jonah doesn't deny it and already knows the story. The story, my friend, is that a few months before these events, there was a smuggling ship loaded with weapons and explosives moving through the sea, but it sank near the island because of a strong storm. Some of the smugglers who were on board managed to reach the island in a small boat, but unfortunately, they arrived at night and none of them survived until morning. The creatures killed them all. When David hears this story, he gets a crazy idea and assumes that if he can dive and reach the location of the sunken ship, he will surely find ammunition or dynamite that could help them in the war against the sea creatures. They have an old and simple diving suit, so he could try, but Jonah refuses and tells him, "Son, the sea is a nightmare for me. There's no way I can go back there. If you want to leave in the boat, there it is, and the sea is right in front of you." After that, time passes and David is doing maintenance on the boat and he starts spending long hours with that creature on the shore. Somehow, their relationship develops a lot and he starts to feel something strange towards her. It's not fear or pity. No, my friend, it's something closer to attachment. The disaster is that Jonah notices this and feels jealous because there was a relationship between him and that creature. And that's why he considers it a betrayal. One day, he goes to David and tells him that he agreed to help him carry out the diving plan. That's what it looks like on the surface. But deep down, it was different. He actually plans to have David go down to the sea to get the dynamite, my friend, and then leave him there to die and walk away. And indeed, they set off on the boat and go together to the place where the ship sank. David puts on the heavy diving suit and starts slowly descending into the depths of the sea. For David, the situation is far from pleasant. The water is murky, it's dark, and it's terrifyingly silent until he finds the ship destroyed. But amid the wreckage, he finds a sealed box of dynamite and starts tying it to the rope to send it up to Gunnar. The water pressure starts to get to him, and his nerves give out, so he falls onto his back and can't stand up because the suit is so heavy. He keeps signaling to Gunnar, who isn't responding to him. Suddenly, he senses movement around him, and the creature appears in front of him, and then disappears, as if it just gave him a burst of energy. He takes off the suit, manages to free himself, and starts swimming to the surface. My friend, at that moment he's sure the creatures have killed David, but before he can move, he finds David has come up alive. They catch their breath for a bit, return to the lighthouse, and start opening the crates, only to be shocked that water has leaked in and the dynamite is ruined. But the surprise is that they find 2 crates intact, and that's more than enough. They immediately start distributing the explosives around the place. The plan was simple and straightforward. As soon as the creatures attack, they light the fuse and blow them all up at once. Time passes and the days go by. And the surprise is that the attacks suddenly stop. The creatures disappeared as if the earth had swallowed them up at first. David felt peace and relief, but Gunnar wasn't comfortable. His mind started to play tricks on him, and he began to believe that the creature with them was the reason. He suspects that maybe she informed her kind about the plan they made. That's why no one is attacking anymore. That doubt, my friend, turned into anger, and the anger made him lose control of himself. In a fit of madness, he attacks her and beats her violently. But this time, David can't stay silent. He quickly intervenes and defends her. And that moment was the beginning of the end between him and Gunnar. And on the next day, the two of them decide to come up with a plan and set a trap. They leave the main door of the lighthouse open so that as soon as those creatures approach, they can blow them up with dynamite. And indeed, after a while, the creatures start coming out of the sea and move directly toward the main gate. As soon as they enter, they attack David, who bravely fights back, my friend, and manages to escape. He hides with Gunnar, and they both wait until a huge number of creatures have gathered. At that moment, Gunnar pulls the fuse lever, but nothing happens. The reason is that David had previously disconnected the wire and forgot to reconnect it. He quickly runs and starts fixing the connection himself. Meanwhile, the creatures start climbing the lighthouse and Gunnar tries to stop them on his own, my friend. As soon as David finishes the connection, Gunnar presses the detonator and the explosion kills a large number of the creatures. But there are still many of them ready to attack, so Gunnar doesn't wait and detonates the second layer. The massive explosion shakes the place, and from its force, both of them lose consciousness. And the next morning, when they wake up, they discover that the creatures have disappeared. The scene is painful. The bodies of the strange creatures are scattered everywhere, blood covering the ground around the lighthouse, and Gunnar walks among them proudly, feeling like a hero, finishing off anyone still breathing. And in the midst of all this, David's eyes fall on something strange. A chain is hanging around the neck of one of those sea creatures. And when he gets closer and looks carefully, shock strikes his heart. At that moment, he realizes the biggest mistake of his life. The creatures they thought were savage and bloodthirsty were actually intelligent beings who could think, comprehend, and had the ability to create and innovate. And he realizes that their attack on the lighthouse had a reason. Maybe they were defending themselves or their homeland, but Gunnar didn't care about any logic. As for him, this island was his kingdom, and everyone on it had to submit to him, whether humans or sea creatures. The man was a tyrant, guys. After that day and the great explosion that happened, the creatures never attacked in the same way again. Every day, just at sunset, there was a faint, muffled sound coming from the shore. A sad sound, as if a flute was mourning the dead. My friend, David realizes the disaster he caused. How many families were torn apart. How many children lost someone they loved, all because of him. The next morning, David sees two small creatures alone on the shore. They look like orphans, the children of those who died. In that moment, his heart clenches. He gathers some stones and builds a circle in the sand, and in the middle of the circle, he places the toy boat he had given to the creatures, hoping they might come back and see it. Maybe, just maybe, they would feel there was hope. One day, David wakes up to find Gunnar unconscious. When he gets closer, he finds an old photo that freezes him in place. The woman in the photo is the same woman he saw in Robert's diary when he first arrived on the island, and he suspects she was his wife. At that moment, David understands the truth. Gunnar wasn't just a madman living alone in the lighthouse. He learns that Gunnar is actually Robert, the meteorologist who was assigned to come to the lighthouse a year before him. After Gunnar regains consciousness, he confesses that he is Robert and that these creatures killed his wife, which is why he seeks revenge. On that day, David goes for his usual walk on the shore, but this time he notices the toy boat is gone from inside the circle. He finds a child creature holding the boat in its hand. At that moment, he raises his flashlight and shines it toward the circle as a gesture of peace, and the child starts to respond, feeling reassured by him. Suddenly the waves move, and the creature who used to live with them appears, followed by a group of creatures, my friend. But this time, none of them attack. They stand quietly, looking at David as if to say, "We also want to live in peace, brother." At that moment, Gunnar comes out of the lighthouse holding a weapon, his eyes full of madness and intent on harm. David runs toward him, trying to calm him down, telling him, "Don't do this, you madman. These creatures don't want violence. The truth is, they want to live in peace, and we misunderstood them. But Gunnar doesn't listen and shouts at the creature, demanding she come back with him. But this time the creature doesn't move. She stands firm, unafraid, protecting her tribe. At that moment, Gunnar says he doesn't need anyone by his side and withdraws, returning to the lighthouse. For a moment, David thinks Gunnar has finally understood that every creature, no matter what it looks like, has the right to live free, not as a follower or property. But as soon as Gunnar reaches the lighthouse door, he raises the flare gun and fires a shot. The shot pierces the air and hits the child in the chest, killing him instantly. All the creatures run away in fear, and we see a very harsh blow from Gunnar. David stands there shocked, and even the creature who loved him no longer believes him. She looks at him with eyes full of pain and betrayal. And that's what happened, my friend. In a moment of rage, David's blood boils and he rushes at Jonah without any warning. He gets into a fight with him. But this time, Jonah is different. He grabs an axe from the wall, intending to finish David off. But in that painful moment, David calls out his real name, Robert, and tells him, "You're not a butcher or a killer. Wake up, Robert." That name rings in his ears, bringing him back to his true self, making him freeze in place. The fire in his eyes goes out because he was never a killer by nature. On the contrary, he was a good man once upon a time. But when grief consumes a person's soul, it turns them into a monster because they no longer feel safe. He knows that these beings never wanted war. All they ever wanted was peace, but he killed them to feel in control, to fill the emptiness inside him. But in the end, he wakes up to the truth and realizes the sin he committed and all the innocent lives lost. So he decides to surrender himself to these entities. And at that moment, my friend, he leaves David and walks toward them with a calm face, telling them, "Take your revenge." Without hesitation, they attack and literally tear him apart. And for your own safety, my friend, I won't show you that scene. David is left in shock and quickly locks himself inside the lighthouse. Hours, days, and months go by. A whole year passes, and then we see a government vessel arriving at the island with a new officer assigned to monitor the weather. They're supposed to replace David. But from David's appearance, the officer thinks that David is the lighthouse keeper Gunnar, and David doesn't correct him. He tells him that the signal man, David, died of fever, then goes up to the lighthouse balcony and looks out at the sea without saying a word. But he has decided to leave the island. In the final scene, they have departed, taking David with them, and the creature he loved came to stop him. But you arrived too late, my friend. And with that, the session is adjourned. Don't forget to get this video to 40,000 likes. And don't forget to tell me your opinion in the comments. Did you feel that David wouldn't go back with them and would stay on the island? Or were you sure that David would leave the island? Do you like action? You'll find suspense and mystery here with us. If you like romance, that's coming up too. There's a lot more ahead. Don't forget to check out the channel and watch everything you've missed because trust me, everything you'll see is absolutely amazing. Be ready, turn on the notification bell and wait for what's new. And I'm sure you'll like the story of the video that's about to appear in front of you. That's it. Goodbye.